Hello, everyone. I'm Shakayla Alvarenga, and I am the Director of Public Programs here at the Mob Museum. Thank you for being here tonight. It is truly an honor to introduce Mika Camarena as part of this year's Hispanic Heritage Month program. Mika Camarena is the widow of Enrique Kiki Camarena, a DEA agent who was tragically kidnapped, tortured, and murdered by Mexican drug cartels. Perhaps no single event had a more significant impact on DEA than the abduction and murder of Camarena. His murder triggered the most extensive homicide investigation ever undertaken by the DEA, ultimately exposing corruption and complicity among numerous Mexican officials. It's not often that we have the privilege of engaging with individuals who can offer such an intimate perspective on someone as impactful as Camarena. Please give a round of applause for Mika.
Thank you. Thank you.
So first, let's just start from the beginning. Can you tell us just a little bit about yourself, your background, and where you grew up?
I grew up in Calexico, California, which is a border town to Mexicali, Baja California. Yes, we spoke Spanglish. And I met Kiki in middle school because he lived it's such a small town, there was only one high school. And so if you lived on the west side, which I did, we didn't wind up in the same elementary schools. So I didn't meet up with him until junior high, because then all the students went there. So I met him there, and it was not until high school in our junior year that we started dating. And so we got to know each other a little bit more.
And that was the beginning of everything that happened.
That was the beginning, yes.
And what attracted you to Enrique?
He played football.
That'll do it.
He played football, and he played basketball. And if our team lost, it was a terrible evening. Oh, he was so angry if they would lose. And it was written all over his face. Mm-hmm. Anybody could tell that he was miserable. In junior year is when we started dating. And at the end of junior year, he actually told me that he wanted to do two things with his life. He said, number one, I want to marry you. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm the youngest of 10, and I'm enjoying, for the first time, my own bedroom. You're looking at me like, And then he said, I want to be an FBI agent. Okay, don't get alarmed. But he changed his mind. And actually, I didn't ask him until we were in Mexico, what made you change your mind? You told me you wanted to be FBI. Mm-hmm. And he says, I love what I'm doing, and I think I do my job well, and I'm staying.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Actually, can you provide just some more insights into his work as a DEA agent before going to Mexico?
In Calexico, he did very well. He communicated with the law enforcement from Mexicali very well. And unfortunately, when we were at a wedding reception, young, I'm going to call them punks, because that's what they were, recognized him as being a narc. Mm-hmm. And so they beat him up in the restroom. 3 of them held them, they broke his ribs, and they broke a thumb. And so that was a little bit of a warning. And so he decided to put in for a transfer. Mm-hmm. And we thought originally that we were going to San Diego, And then we were called back and said, no. So he says, okay, this is what they're offering. Peru or South America or Fresno. And I knew Fresno because my family used to go to the summer and pick crops over there. I was too little, so I didn't get to do that, but my siblings did. And so I was a little bit, it was okay. But I did tell him, because he was a very firm person in his beliefs, and I would not want to discourage him from going anywhere, because I knew how well he worked. And so I said, okay, if you want to go to South America, adios, because I'm staying here. and he decided to go to Fresno.
Yeah.
We had a 4-year-old and another one on the way. And so they loved him in Fresno. Fresno had they had problems where the agencies won't work together. And that wasn't Kiki's thinking at all. He always managed to work with whoever. And like I mentioned earlier, he was very easy to make friends, and he could smile at you and talk to you, and he would never tell you that he didn't like you. So before we knew it, Fresno, the State Department and the sheriff and DEA and the local PD were working together. And I thought, what did you do? Says I went and had some beers with them and told them they don't have to like each other. But if we're going to accomplish something, you've got to work together. But the intelligence and everything, and that's exactly what happened. So I guess he got restless, and he would stay in touch with a lot of the DEA friends that he had. And so, of course, he got the news, you can come to Guadalajara if you want to. Oh my God, he was packed and gone before I knew it. And I was a little anxious about it.
Yeah.
Because my second baby had been born, and I don't know what it was about these transfers. I was pregnant every time. So I was expecting my third son.
Yeah.
And that's literally the only thing that worried me. And a DA family stays together. They're very united. And so a friend of ours that actually baptized my youngest son, she talked to Kiki, and she wrote to me to tell me everything that I needed to bring. That I was not going to buy the formula, that I was not going to buy the baby food, the diapers I actually bought, but they weren't any good. So she prepared me. And so I said, okay, I can do this.
Yeah.
And what I wasn't prepared for was that he was going to go leave to San Diego while we were still in temporary quarters. That's how soon it started. And that's because a case that he started in Fresno, they had a shooting after we left. And so he was the agent in charge of that situation. So he had to come back. That was really hard. The first thing I want to do is get on that plane with him. And then I overheard my son say, well, can I go, Daddy? And I said, uh-oh. So then I said, no, we don't need to go. Daddy will be back. Because I realized that, they were going to follow my steps, and that was not going to work out. So we stayed, and he left and handled what he had to do. But another thing that was very difficult to comprehend, but Kiki handled it very well. The first thing they told him is they couldn't carry a handgun. Imagine that. How are you going to be a DA agent? What are you just supposed to collect information and turn your face and not see what you're seeing? You know. So he says, "Well, I'm carrying one." Well, they're going to take it from you. If they stop you, it's okay. I'll get another one. You know. As long as they didn't arrest him, he was okay with that.
Yeah.
But that was very disturbing to me. We didn't have an embassy passport. We had a consulate, so we weren't protected. The agents at the embassy were protected. And yet they were doing the same thing that the guys in Guadalajara were doing. And so that was very upsetting, because if a policeman stopped you while you were driving, you had to be prepared to pay them off. Not argue, not question, just, you know, well, I think you did this, right? And I learned right away that I had to have cash on me so that I could be prepared so they wouldn't take my car.
Yeah. So as Mika mentioned, Enrique was working undercover in Guadalajara, Mexico,
Yes.
to track down marijuana and cocaine drug traffickers. His work had led to significant disruptions in the drug trade, particularly affecting the notorious Guadalajara cartel. And then I want to get into what happened on that day, on February 7th. So at about 2 p.m. in 1985, on February 7th, while leaving the U.S. consulate in Guadalajara to meet Mika for lunch, Enrique was abducted by a group of men who shoved him into a car, and then they sped away. And this was the last time anyone but his kidnappers would see him alive. When did you notice, Mika, that something was wrong?
Well, I waited for him at the restaurant. He had been very busy, and I was so happy when he called that he was actually making time for me. And so I was lucky, because for the first year I didn't have babysitter or lady that I could just tick off anytime I wanted to, if I needed to. With 3 kids, that was very hard. So I did have a sitter, and so I said, yes, I'll meet you there. We knew where we were going to meet. And so I drove over there and waited for him, and it wasn't unusual to me. Even though he had never stood me up, it wasn't unusual to me for him not to be there, because in those days we didn't have cell phones. They used to use walkie-talkies, the agents, and so there was no way that he could call me. And so I decided to have lunch, and then I went home, and I thought he'll call, you know. But he didn't. Again, I thought, they're too busy, and that's okay. So that day, I took my oldest son for a haircut. We came back, picked up my 2 other boys, and we played that afternoon at the park. It was just peaceful. I literally think that God gave me that peace to enjoy my boys and to protect them. And we went home, we had dinner, got them ready for bed, and I went to bed. It was very unusual to me again, I feel that my Heavenly Father was protecting me, because I would always, if he came in late and I was asleep, he wouldn't wake me, but I would always do this thing where I would reach out to see if he was there, to touch him. And once I knew he was there, I'd go right back to sleep. That night, I didn't do that. And I slept until 6 o'clock in the morning. And when I woke up, I was pretty sure he hadn't come home. So I got up, got my kids ready for school, took them to school, and hurried back. And then I called one of the agents to let him know that Kiki had not come home. And the first thing he said was, well, didn't he meet you for lunch? And I said, no. And then I realized afterwards that they had actually left Kirkendall, his boss, and Shaggy had walked out of the consulate, and they saw his truck parked there. I'll talk about assuming. I assumed he had gone to work. They assumed that I had picked him up and took him home. And that wasn't very usual, though. He would have never left his truck there. He just wouldn't have. So it was haunting to me. Why didn't I think of calling the office? You know, why did I assume? And so they felt the same way as I did. Later, we found out that the house that they took him to, where he was being tortured, was not even that far from my house. So it was a shock to everybody. And the first thing they thought that they sent agents to my house in case they called for ransom or at the DA office. And of course, that was not going to happen. And so we waited. I waited. I lose track of time during that time, and I didn't want to send my kids to San Diego to my sisters, but I was falling apart, and they finally had to get a doctor and give me some medication to keep me calm, because I was getting anxiety attacks. And I didn't want my children to see me that way, so I finally decided to send them home to my sister. And the first thing I told her is, do not let them watch TV. They were only 11 and 6 and 4. So I did not want them watching everything that was on TV. It wasn't easy for me to not be able to get some positive news. And so I was deteriorating, and finally I said, okay, I'm going home. Now, what you need to know is that we had already received our orders. When we transferred to Guadalajara, it was for 2 years. Well, Kiki wasn't done, so we stayed another 2 years. And by the time that headquarters put his transfer together, it was 4.5 years. So we were destined to move to San Diego. And 2 weeks before our transfer date, he was kidnapped. So I came home without my husband, and still having to deal with waiting that they would find him. By the time I came home to San Diego, I knew. I just felt it in my heart. Even 2 days after he was taken, which would have been the 9th, I just had a gut feeling that he was gone. And that's actually what happened. And so, but then you have all these news, and your hopes are high, and then it's low. It took them 30 days to find his body, and that of his pilot, who was his informant.
And Mika, if you can, I do want to touch on Alfredo Avalar. Hours later, he was a Mexican agricultural department pilot,
Yes.
and he was working with anti-drug authorities as well.
Yes.
He was abducted right after your husband was
Yes.
abducted. Did you know him?
Yes, I did. Some agents tend to make their CIs or their informants friends. You know, when they have this unity of friendship and trust that they gain from each other. DEA pays, I have no idea what they pay them, but they were loyal. And so I didn't even see them that way, you know. I never saw them wrong, because without an informant, an agent does not get very much done. They have to have proof, and they get back to the agent with this information. He was a pilot, so even better, because in Mexico they would hide the marijuana fields, and they were sometimes in places where you couldn't see them from anywhere unless you flew right to them. And so they also kidnapped him, and I'm very, very happy to say that DEA helped up his family, because what I remember reading, and there was so much to read, that they had also tortured him and buried him alive. So, and he had young children. So DEA helped his family, and I was really happy to hear that.
And I want to go back to what you had said prior. So it's believed that Enrique's death occurred, as you mentioned, on February 9th of 1985. Both his and Avalar's body was discovered on March 5th, almost, you know, a month later. What was that feeling of uncertainty like when you were, you know, back in San Diego? Just that period.
It was very, very difficult, because my gut, like I said, told me that he was gone.
Yeah.
But it was frustrating, and I would get so angry not knowing where he was. And I remember telling Kirkendall, his boss, I said, when you find him, I don't want the Mexican government touching him. And of course, that wasn't prevented. They did the autopsy in Mexico. And then it was somehow redone again when they brought his body back.
What impact do you think Enrique's murder had on U.S.-Mexico relations?
I'm sorry?
What impact do you think Enrique's murder had on U.S.-Mexico relations at the time?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
So why do you think, you know, your late husband Enrique's death was so significant to both the U.S. and Mexico?
I don't know how to answer that, because she's passed already, and she was very...
Enrique, your late husband.
Are you asking about his mother, or?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's okay. The impact that his death had on U.S. and Mexico.
In Mexico?
Yeah, his death. What impact? Why was it significant?
It had a lot of impact, because I remember the agents telling me that the minute that I informed them that he was missing, they dropped what they were doing and they went to the law enforcement in Guadalajara. There was no one there, maybe one or two officers. It's like they left on purpose because they didn't want to say anything. And so basically that caused the agents to have to be on their own to look for him. So with no one to lead them, no one to help them. And it was very painful for them. It was very depressing for them. It was not knowing and having to search in such a large city.
Yeah.
So every time I would ask, every day I would ask, he said, no, nothing, no, nothing. And so that was the hardest part of having to wait 30 days to confirm what I already knew. And I'm not sure if you know why the bodies were actually found, because Mexico was not telling us anything. And what I found out later is that the person in charge of our border in San Diego was frustrated as well. And so they were checking cars. So the crossing to the US from Mexico was just bumper to bumper. And of course, Mexico didn't like that. But they wouldn't do anything about it. So the person in charge of the border decided, well, I guess he had talked to Washington, and he took it on his own to close the border. Just blocked it. Guess what? They reacted. So the bodies were found. They had been buried, and they were brought up from the earth and laid in white sheets by the road. And then they announced that the bodies had been found. And unfortunately, they were taken to the authorities. And I don't know if some of you have seen this, but when the bodies were found, the Mexican authorities put them in the back of a pickup truck, laying in the back for everyone to see, and took them to the authorities so they could do what they needed to do with the bodies. So I've been told that Kiki was not recognizable. The pilot was. So that was very difficult for me to accept, and it affected me quite a bit. And I try to keep my pain and my sorrow from my children. And the therapist, 6 years of therapy, the therapist told me, don't hold back. Just do it. Feel what you have to feel. Don't worry about the children. And I had grown up to be very protective, as most law enforcement families are with their children. So it was very hard for me to accept that I could cry in front of them, that I could let them know that I was going to be okay. And so I did that. I sat the three of them down and said, Mommy is going to be hurting, she's going to be crying, and she's going to be sad, but I'm going to be okay. So the next thing I know, I was coming down the stairs in my home, and halfway down the stairs, I just dropped. And I just started crying. They were jumping on both sides of me. never stopped to say what's wrong? Because I had explained it to them. And I thought, oh my God. All this time I was just getting a knot in my throat and in my stomach. And so from there on, I was able to feel what I needed to feel, and they were okay.
You said, so you had 3 boys. You said you wanted a girl, though, wasn't
Yes.
it?
Yeah.
Never happened?
3 times I told my sister, have those earrings ready for me. 3 times, nothing. And I told my third son, I said, you know, we weren't supposed to have you, but Kiki wanted the girl more than I did. And I had given up. And so I said, no, we're going to keep moving, and I do not want to be raising more children. So he says, okay, this one will be the last time. And here comes another boy.
I do want to mention that your sons did very well for themselves. One is a judge, I believe,
Yes.
in
He's
California.
a Superior Court judge in San Diego.
Yeah.
Thank you. And it made me so happy to be able to be present when he was sworn in. But it also made me happy when I was doing my traveling, and at every DA office they would tell me, we watched it and we were cheering for him. Just this big old family that, at times when we're down, we forget. And so they were so proud of him because they knew that Kiki was proud. And he was. Yeah. He is proud.
So I want to touch upon the months following what happened. On May 3rd, 1985, a new DEA investigative task force was established to coordinate and probe the abduction of Camarena and Zavala. This initiative was called Operation Leyenda, which translates to lawman in Spanish. This team determined that 5 individuals had abducted Special Agent Camarena and transported him to a house in Guadalajara on February 7th, 1985. He was tortured for more than 30 hours before he was killed, and Operation Leyenda yielded indictments against several individuals associated with the abduction and murder. Were you satisfied with Operation Leyenda's results?
It's not over.
Yeah.
So I thought that I could be at the trial. Of course, it was going to be in Los Angeles. And when they had everything ready to go, they asked me, and I said no. I said, I don't want them to see me breaking, and I don't want to see them in person. And so because of that, the DEA gave me copies of the autopsy report, because obviously we couldn't view him, and also gave me copies of the interrogation tapes because they recorded him. And the only reason that Kiki lasted as long as he did was because they brought in a doctor to give him injections to revive him so they could keep interrogating him. And so it was evil. It was cruel. No one deserves to die that way. No one. And I just feel that when he was taken, when he saw his abductors, I knew without a doubt that he knew he wasn't coming home, because he knew these people. Whether it be from far away or pictures, that's their job, to know who the cartels are, to know what family they come from. it's a lot of information that they have to be aware of. So I know without a doubt that once he got to see and who was interrogating him, he knew he was not coming home. He just didn't know what was going to happen and how long it was going to take.
So the investigation into Enrique's murder faced significant challenges, and I'm wondering how you dealt with all of the complexities, because it wasn't just a normal case. It was international, and so how was that for you?
Well, we had been married a short 15 years, and I always thought, because their lives are in danger, I chose to think that he was going to die from a gunshot wound, that he was going to be shot. And so I worried about him. I worried about what was going to happen. And when I would talk to him about it, of course, he didn't want to talk about it. And he said, "Don't worry," he says this to me. And it probably will sound familiar to some of you ladies. "You're going to be better off when I'm not here." and I just was flabbergasted. I didn't know what to think. And he was right. He was right. But for years, I couldn't even spend what was given to me. I didn't want to spend it. It just felt terrible. All that mattered to me was protecting my children.
Yeah. There was a photo that just passed of you and the former president. What happened there?
When the agent that was in charge of me got the notice that President Reagan wanted to speak with me, I said, "No, I'm not going. He doesn't need to speak to me. He should have invited Kiki to the White House." And the agent is just sitting there looking at me. "You can't refuse him." So it did not feel good at all.
No.
I don't think I felt honored for a long time, because I truly, truly felt that Kiki should have been the one there, not me. And so, unfortunately, everything that he told me that was and maybe could happen never happened. Because the truth is that our relationship with Mexico is very poor. The government is bought. They protect the cartels. So they just made it very, very obvious. And I guess that's the story behind politicians. What can I say?
There were some advocacy efforts that you personally undertook to seek justice for Enrique and raise awareness about his case. Can you tell us about your foundation?
Yes, I had stayed out of the public, I'm going to say. I had traveled many times while I lived with my sister to receive recognitions for Kiki throughout the U.S. And pretty soon I felt very drained, and my middle one, which was 6, my sister finally told me, he cries a lot when you leave. So when I was flying back, I kept thinking, what am I to do here? And I realized that he was afraid of mommy leaving because daddy left. And he's the one that took it the hardest. And but he has a memory. He remembers Kiki a lot. My youngest one doesn't too much. But it was difficult for all of us.
And so the foundation that you created.
This is what happened. My son informed me that some retired DEA agents were going to have a meeting and that they wanted to put a foundation together. But no one had notified me. And so I said, well, I'm going to that meeting. So I met up with them, and they were very surprised to see me. And so we talked about it, that we wanted to bring out drug awareness, that we wanted to raise funds to give seniors high school scholarships, that we would be speaking at schools at all levels when we could. The difficult part about that was that the speakers were just me and my oldest. And so we managed, and it just went so well. I have to proudly say that our monies, the most of our donations came from AFNA, which is the Association of Former Federal Narcotics. These are retired people. And I was just humbled to know that they were doing this for the foundation to help us. And I felt that these agents that I met up with were all retired, and I thought they could be doing anything they want. You know, do what they didn't get a chance to do while they worked. And that they're the ones that convinced me to join them. And now we have one retired agent on our board. Everybody's new. And I'm still the president. But it's very, very humbling that retired agents got us started on this, and we're still doing that. We speak at schools. We've got another retired agent that speaks throughout the U.S., and we have an agent that actually works with the gangs, and he holds conferences, and he sells coins of Kiki, and because they're mainly for law enforcement. And he's helped us quite a bit. So there's very few times in my life that I feel alone, because there's so many people that care. And I was like in a shock, because during Kiki's career, just like most of the other agents, we live a very private life. We don't, I remember someone telling me after Kiki was taken, asked me, did you and Kiki go to the movies in Mexico? I said, yes. Someone was watching us. And they could have taken us, they didn't. But, so when this happened, DA reacted in a way that they needed to protect myself and my children. And for months, they drove us wherever we had to go to therapy. It was frightening, especially after knowing what they had done to Kiki. And so, yeah, my life and the life of my kids, as much as I protected them, came to a screeching halt. Everything I knew was gone. Everything that I thought I was going to be doing was gone.
Before we open it up to the audience for questions, I have one last question for you.
Okay.
What would you like for people to remember most about your late husband and the sacrifices he made?
First and most important, do not forget him. Kiki was such a humble person that he would have never imagined the attention that his death has gotten. And that was one of the reasons also that I didn't want to get involved, because he never shared his work. He didn't want me to worry about him. He didn't dare share if there was a day that was not a safe day. But I remember one day that he came home, and for some reason I was worried. And I just hugged him and I said, I prayed for you today. And he said, I'm glad you did. And that wasn't even like him. So I knew there was danger, without a doubt. I was a nervous wreck, hoping that we could get out of Mexico to transfer. And we didn't get that chance. So I came back by myself. My kids were already in San Diego. And couldn't even imagine what I was going to do. Kiki was all law enforcement. When we got married, he had 3 or 4 months left in the Marine Corps. So when he came out, he was discharged. My first thought was, you need a job. I had a job, but he didn't have a job. Being that we were raised in such a small town, everybody knew each other. So my sister-in-law's brother was the chief of the fire department. Kiki wanted to join the police department, but we found out that they weren't taking any applications. So I went over to the police department, got him an application, sent it to him. He had a job when he came home. He was nonstop. After that, he joined the police department. After that, he joined the Imperial County Sheriff's Department as a narcotic officer. And after that, he joined the EA. So he was very determined. Nothing was too big for him. And unfortunately, that's why he's not here, because he was nonstop. He would give out cases that another agent would close because he was too busy doing something better. And so I want you to remember him as a fantastic agent, a good father, devoted. And I tell you, he made many, many a friend in the short 37 years of his life. So all I ask is, don't forget him.
Thank you, Mika.
And mainly because there are so many other agents still doing what he did. And they all need our prayers. This world is changing so much that it's nothing like when we were growing up. I want to tell you a last little story. When he was in the fire department, I was so newly married that, and he would worry if he had to go out of town, and so he always wanted one of my nephews or my nieces to stay with me while he was gone. So one of my nephews said, asked me, he says, why does my Tio Kiki have to be gone? You know, where is he? And at that time, we had fires in the mountains between San Diego and Imperial Valley. And so he was at the fire department. And so they would stay out there in the hills fighting the fire. But that wasn't enough for my nephew. The minute he got a chance to ask Kiki about what he was doing, he did. And Kiki said, well, you know, those firemen work very hard and they get hungry. So I'm the taco guy. You know, he wanted to tell him something he would understand. So he was a good friend, and he lived too short of life.
Thank you.
And I can assure you, you would like him.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So we have just a few minutes to answer any questions that anyone may have. If you'll just raise your hand, we have a mic going around. Don't be shy. We have one right here. Just give us 1 second.
On the TV series that's been on television in the past portraying the life of Kiki, do you feel like that was accurate? Have you seen that?
Narcos. The Last Narc.
Yeah.
Have
If I
you seen-
played it, I couldn't hear it.
Have you seen The Last Narc on TV?
Yes, I have, and I hated it. It's unreal. And I can tell you that I had choice words with the producer. I gave them a lot of my time, and it was painful. And when the producer turned around and did what he did, I was so angry. And let me tell you, I've had many reasons to be angry, but my anger, I can't solve it. I can't do anything about it. They just won't listen to you.
Thank you.
Right here.
First off, Mrs. Camarena, thanks very much for being here. Your strength is absolutely awe-inspiring, and just to speak about your experiences is just, it's amazing just to sit here and listen to you. I've actually got two questions. One, what Kiki would say about what's going on out in the streets today.
I'm sorry?
I'm wondering what Kiki would say about what's going on out in the streets today. And kind of my second question is totally unrelated. There was another TV series, I think it was on Netflix a couple of years ago, and I think maybe they might have interviewed you for it. But it had to do with maybe a gentleman who was maybe affiliated with the CIA who had something to do with Kiki's death. And he may be living in Florida now, and he had some trained in the School of the Americas and whatnot. I'm wondering if you could speak to how accurate that was and how that came to be.
To answer your first question, I think Kiki would be upset of what the cartels are getting away with. But as far as his personal life, he'd say, I'm at peace. I'm not hurting anymore. Did I answer both his questions?
Yep, and then
Yes.
the second question. So he asked about an interview that you did on Netflix.
Yeah, about a gentleman who may have been involved in Kiki's death and had some affiliation with the CIA.
What was it?
Are you comfortable with answering about someone who may have been involved with his death, with Kiki's death?
Sure. And what was the question?
So if you could talk about I'm not sure what gentleman you're talking about, but
It was just a gentleman. It was something came up on a Netflix series. It was a documentary a couple years ago, just where I think a lady back here said his name was Felix Rodriguez. I think was his
okay.
name.
Again.
Okay, so Felix Rodriguez. Does that name sound familiar
Yes,
to you?
yes.
So your thoughts on him and his involvement with Kiki's death?
There were so many that were involved in Kiki's death that I chose not to go there with each one because it can affect my health. It has affected my health. 10 years after Kiki was murdered, I wound up with cardiomyopathy, and I was actually told that I needed a heart transplant. My kids were still young. I was so frightened. And thank God that it turned out to be, it wasn't my arteries, it affected my heart muscle. So since 10 years after Kiki died, I've been on medication since then because I have to be on it. Otherwise, my heart would start failing. And so for that reason, I don't want their actions or their memory to take me away. My kids and my grandkids need me. And so I have found more peace by actually thinking that when they have to, each and every one of them, when they have to answer to their Maker, there will be justice. I don't want to wait because I don't know how long it's going to take for something that would satisfy me. It's been 38 years, and the investigation is still going. And so I choose to think like Kiki did, live for now. Live for now, don't worry about other things, but then I have to admit, I am a worrier. I am, and I have to keep reminding myself to not do that. And so I call on him and tell him, help me out here, help me out here. This is too much for me. And never in my life did I imagine that we were going to go through this, never. And so I remember, I have to tell you this story. I remember when I was still in Mexico, and I called on my God, and I said, what everybody says, why? Why? Why, Kiki? Why? Why is this happening? You need to bring him back. And I was silent. And he answered, he said, if not Kiki, then who? I immediately said, give us the courage for what's up ahead, because I'm not picking anybody.
Any other questions? It's hard to see.
Okay, that's it. Too late. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here tonight.